Hello, I'm Bryan Hutcheson, Sheriff of Rockingham County in the city of Harrisonburg, and thank you for joining me for this week's segment of the Rocktown Crime Report on rocktownnow.com. Today's Friday, March the 7th, and we're going to start this segment off a little differently. We're going to go right to the question of the week. Had a great question that came in that I think is going to take us right in the direction of all the information we want to cover today. So it's a great question, and that question is, what types of crimes are common in our area right now? And so we're gonna talk about that, kind of get caught up on current events for crime. And so thank you for that question. And we're going to start off. We're actually going to talk about it in terms of two things: arrest numbers, which we like to do that, kind of get a breakdown on that from time to time, as well as maybe even look at it in the sense of crime trends and what's going on there too. But let's start off by taking a look here at some of the arrest numbers. And what we're looking at here in this graph, you have this is a breakdown of the arrest from Sunday, February the 16th through Sunday, March the 2nd. So that's a 2 week time frame that we're looking at here. And we have all arrests broken down into those three categories as we've done before. They're in blue at 39%. You see the pretrial probation violations. That's anything like capias, failed to appear, show cause, violate a court order, anything like that. Basically, a lot of those end up being things where the judge told someone to do something and they didn't do it, or they told them not to do something and they did it. So a lot of those pretrial probation type violations, they're in blue. And then in red, you see the drug and alcohol related offenses, things like drunk in public, DUI, possession, distribution of illegal drugs, all of those charges related to that, we have there in red at 36%. And then everything else, all other offenses are there in green, and they comprise 25% of the arrests for that 2 week time period. And so, from an overall number standpoint, wanted to point out we had a total number of 189 people. That's what comprises that chart there. So 189 total number of people were physically arrested and brought into this facility, and that's whether it's by federal authorities, state authorities, or local law enforcement. That's the total number that were brought in. An interesting side note to that is the lowest for a day in that period was 4, and the highest number of arrests that were brought in during that period was 23. So pretty big range there from day to day, and the average for that time period, if you average it out, comes out to about 14 arrests per day. But really of significance in looking at this chart, when you see the breakdown, the red and blue combined for 75%. That is an overwhelming, very significant portion of the charges that were placed here recently. So you're talking about what is kind of going on and what kind of crimes are common in our area right now. Well, there's 3/4. It's a very significant, really overwhelmingly significant portion of the charges that people are getting arrested for are those breakdown into that area. So that's a good overview for that, and looking at it from the sense of arrest numbers themselves. And then another thing I wanted to point out, kind of lends to our next point, is the number of charges. That number and what you just looked at was the number of arrests, but that's not the number of charges. So the number of charges is always going to be greater than the number of arrests. And it makes sense when you think some people get brought in. They might get brought in on 5, 6, 7, 8 or more charges. So there's a lot more charges or offenses that they're being charged for than people themselves. Number of charges is always greater than the number of arrests. And so that, taking that and talking about our next point, we're looking at what crimes are common in our community right now in the sense of crime trends. And for one thing that I want to touch on, we touched on it last week, but to really reiterate that, where we're at right now, I guess with the weather, we're kind of seems like stuck between the winter season and the spring season. But we are certainly in scam season from a crime standpoint. The scams, we're not seeing a slowdown there. All kinds of scams, all kinds of types, trying to get your money. So if you didn't see last week's segment, I think it was, check out some of the pointers there. But it is definitely scam season is what we're in right now. So keeping that in mind. But another thing along the crime trends, a lot of times what we see is when it's a particular crime that's going on, we have a high volume of that type of offense. And this is true for things like you'll hear about the catalytic converters. When we have one theft of a catalytic converter, it's multiple. Same way with the construction site. When we encounter a theft from a construction site, then it's multiple. It's not just the one. So it's a kind of a spree. And something we had here, we wanted to touch on today, right at the end of February, we had the residential vehicle break-in spree. We had multiple vehicles in the Massanetta Springs area of the county that that were broken into during the overnight hours. And what they do is people on these sprees, they'll go check every vehicle that's not locked and grab anything and everything they can get out of those vehicles. And so we had one again just very, very recently. And in the sense of crime trends or sprees, we don't anticipate that that will be the end of it. Until we catch somebody, then they're going to keep on doing that. So that's one that we're seeing right now. So I'll lead that right into to the point of remember to always lock your vehicles. Whether or not you're at home or you're in public, lock those vehicles at all times. It helps if you have a well-lit area or maybe a motion detector or better yet, a security camera at your house. But certainly lock the vehicle, make it a hard target because when we see sprees like this in crime trends for the easy grab vehicle break-ins like we're having now, you want to make yourself a hard target. So wanted to throw that out there. That is very much a crime trend or a common crime that is going on in our area. And back to my original point, whenever we catch that individual, say for instance, it could just be one person, but it might be 15 or 20 charges of breaking into this vehicle, that vehicle, and on down the line. So that's kind of a good example of that very point. And that was a good question as far as the types of crimes, looking at it, arrest numbers and crime trends themselves. Hopefully that was a interesting and informative look at it. Nothing earth shattering or anything crazy, but certainly hopefully some useful information or a little bit of knowledge about what's going on as far as in our community right now. So thank you for that. A lot to be aware of. Basically, that's our segment for today. If we wanted to touch on all those things, our next segment that we're going to have is going to be Friday, March the 21st, 2 weeks from today. And we are still working on doing maybe a special feature with our motorcycles as we did with our canines in the past. We're going to maybe put something together, hopefully even a little competition to show our motorcycle units. A lot of different things that they do, things you might be aware of and not be aware of. But we're going to kind of highlight them. If not in our next segment, maybe the one after that in April. Once we get into spring, it'll be nice to have that. And that's something when spring comes, we bring those motorcycles out for all types of purposes. We're getting closer. I think Sunday we turn the clocks spring ahead. So that's maybe the first indication that we got spring weather coming, and we're hoping for the best there. But again, that's our segment for today. Thank you for tuning into it with us. If you have any other questions, we appreciate the questions. Email those into news@Rocktown Now. Check out rocktownnow.com. Again, thank you for tuning into this segment. We'll see you next time.